The moment I heard it, every hair on my body stood up. It was a Thursday morning. I was on my knees scrubbing my sister's kitchen floor like I had been asked, like the good, dependable Moira I had always been. The kind of woman everyone calls when they need something done, and nobody calls when they want to celebrate. The house was supposed to be empty. My sister Reina was in Cancun. She had been gone 3 days. Nobody else was supposed to be there. And then Paula, the maid I had brought with me, stopped mopping mid-stroke, turned to me with wide eyes and whispered, "Do you hear that?" I held my breath. From behind the locked door at the end of the hallway, the one Reina told me was just storage, don't bother with it, came the unmistakable sound of a child crying. Not a TV. Not a neighbor's house. Not my imagination. A real child, in my sister's house, behind a locked door, while she was sipping cocktails on a beach 3,000 miles away. And what I found on the other side of that door didn't just break my heart. It broke open a secret my entire family had been burying for 4 years. Stay with me, because what happened next will make your jaw drop, and what I did about it, quietly, without a single argument or shouting match, will remind you that the most powerful revenge is always the kind that wears a suit and carries a briefcase. Before I go any further, if you have ever been the person in your family who was used, overlooked, and taken for granted while others took the credit and lived the glory, please subscribe right now. Your support means everything, and it reminds me I'm not alone in this. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because this story is just getting started and you will not want to miss a single word of what comes next. My name is Moira. I'm 37 years old and I live in Miami, Florida. I have lived here my entire life, in the same city where my mother raised us, in the same heat, the same salt air, the same family drama that never seemed to cool down no matter the season. I am the middle child of 3. My older sister is Reina, 41, beautiful in the way that demands a room's attention, and cunning in the way that never gets caught. My younger brother is Anthony, 33, quiet, always trying to keep the peace, which in our family meant he always ended up saying nothing when something desperately needed to be said. Our mother, Teresa, is 64. She raised us alone after our father, Douglas, left when Anthony was 6. She worked double shifts at a hotel laundry for 15 years so we could eat and have school shoes that weren't worn through. If there is a saint in this story, it is Teresa. I want you to understand something before I go further. I have spent most of my adult life being the family's reliable one, not the favorite, not the celebrated one, the reliable one. The one you call when you need someone to watch the dog, pick up the prescription, co-sign the loan, cover the rent gap, show up on moving day. I did all of it, not because I was weak, but because I loved my family and I believed that love meant showing up. My husband Tony used to say to me, "Moira, love is not supposed to drain you dry." I didn't listen for a long time. I should have listened. It started the way it always started with Reina, casually, like it was nothing. She called me on a Sunday evening in early April. I was cooking dinner. Tony was on the couch watching a game. She said, "Mo, I'm going to Cancun with Philip for 10 days. I need someone to check on the house, water the plants, maybe give it a little clean before I get back. You know how I like to come home to a clean house? They are." Philip was her boyfriend of 2 years, wealthy, well-dressed, the kind of man who laughed a little too loud at his own jokes. I had never fully trusted him, but I could never say exactly why. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Tony looked up from the TV and shook his head slowly when I told him, but he didn't say anything. He knew better than to argue about Reina at that point. The house was in Coral Gables, a beautiful, large home that Reina had purchased 4 years ago, right around the time she'd received a sum of money that nobody in the family could quite account for. I had asked about it once. She told me she had made a smart investment. I let it go. I brought Paula with me. Paula had been my cleaning lady for 6 years, and she was more than an employee. She was someone I genuinely trusted. She was thorough, honest, and sharp as a blade. She also had a way of noticing things that other people walked right past. We arrived at the house on a Thursday morning at 9. Reina had left me a key and a short list: water plants, wipe counters, vacuum living room. Don't touch the storage room at the end of the hall. Just leave that door alone. Asuro. I remember reading that note and thinking nothing of it. It was Paula who heard it first. We had been inside for about 40 minutes. I was in the kitchen, she was in the hallway with the mop. I heard her go completely still. The sloshing of the mop bucket just stopped, and then she appeared in the kitchen doorway with a look on her face I had never seen before. "Miss Moira," she said very quietly. "Do you hear that? R.R." And then I heard it. A child crying, soft, muffled, but real, coming from the storage room. My first thought was panic. My second thought was that I was imagining it. My third thought came with my feet already moving down the hallway. I stood in front of the door and knocked. "Hello? Is someone in there? Airily?" The crying stopped. The silence was somehow worse. I called Raina, she didn't pick up. I called twice more, nothing. Paula was standing behind me and she said the words that cracked everything open. "Miss Moira, we have to open that door." I didn't have a key to that specific room, but I knew where Raina kept a spare key box. She had shown me once, years ago, laughing and saying being in case I ever lock myself out. I went to the kitchen drawer, found the small metal box, and went through 6 keys before I found the right one. The door opened. What I saw inside made me grab the door frame to steady myself. She was small, maybe 4 years old, sitting on a cot in the corner of a room that had been set up, almost carefully, with a little mat, a few toys, a child's drawing taped to the wall. There was a small lamp on the floor, a half-eaten plate of crackers, a cup of juice. She had dark curly hair and enormous brown eyes, and she was looking at me like she didn't know whether to cry or run. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, and my voice came out barely above a whisper. "My name is Moira. I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name?" She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, "Samantha." "Hi, Samantha. How old are you?" She held up 4 fingers. Paula was already on the phone with 911 behind me. I sat down on the floor in front of this little girl, and I talked to her softly while my whole world was rearranging itself. Her name was Samantha. She called my sister Auntie Raina. She said her mommy was away. She didn't know where. She said a lady named Miss Janet usually stayed with her, but Miss Janet hadn't come and she was hungry and scared. I held her hand and I told her she was safe now. I told her I wasn't leaving. The police arrived in 11 minutes. Social services came 40 minutes after that. The next 4 hours were a blur of questions, forms, and phone calls. And then a social worker named Bradley sat down across from me in Raina's kitchen and told me something that made my blood go cold. Samantha was not just any child. Samantha was my brother Anthony's daughter. Here is what I learned, pieced together over the following days through conversations with Anthony, with social worker Bradley, with a family attorney named Smith, and eventually, painfully, with my mother Teresa. 3 years ago, Anthony had been in a relationship with a woman named Lauren. Lauren had become pregnant. Anthony was not in a stable place financially or emotionally at the time. Raina had stepped in, not out of kindness, but out of control. Raina had convinced both Anthony and Lauren to allow her to help with the child. She told them she would care for Samantha temporarily, help them get back on their feet. Anthony, trusting his sister completely, had agreed. Lauren, struggling and overwhelmed, had agreed too. But temporary became 1 year, then 2, then 3. Raina moved the child into her home and used her as leverage over Anthony, over Lauren, and eventually over Philip, whose financial contributions to the household, I later discovered, were partly motivated by his not knowing the full truth about who Samantha was. My mother had known. She had known for over 2 years and said nothing because Raina had told her it was handled, and because Teresa, tired and worn down, had believed her eldest daughter. Anthony had been sending Raina money every month for Samantha's care. The woman had been collecting child support informally from her own brother for a child she was keeping isolated in a locked room when she left town. The caretaker, Janet, a woman I later learned Raina paid cash, had apparently had a family emergency and couldn't come. Raina had simply locked Samantha in the room with provisions and gone on her vacation anyway. The moment I understood the full scope of what I was looking at, something in me went very, very quiet. I want to be clear about something. I did not scream at Raina. I did not call her and hurl accusations across a phone line. I did not post anything on social media. I did not go to my mother's house and make a scene. What I did was call a woman named Alicia. Alicia was a family law attorney I had met through a neighborhood association 2 years prior. She was brilliant, methodical, and she had a reputation for being the kind of lawyer who never raised her voice because she never needed to. I sat in Alicia's office that Friday morning and I told her everything. I had brought photographs I had taken of the room, the cot, the food, the door lock. I had copies of the text messages between Raina and me about the house. I had the social services intake report. I had screenshots of bank transfers from Anthony to Raina labeled Sam's Care that Anthony, shell-shocked and devastated, had sent me himself that same morning. Alicia looked at everything for a long time. Then she looked at me over her glasses and said, "Moira, do you understand what you have here?" I said, tell me. She said, everything. Oster. What followed over the next 6 weeks was not dramatic. It was paperwork. It was filings. It was a child welfare investigation that Raina could not charm her way out of, no matter how hard she tried. It was Anthony, guided by Alicia and a second attorney named Hass, formally establishing paternity and petitioning for custody. It was a formal investigation into the financial arrangement Raina had been running, which, it turned out, rose to the level of fraud. She had been claiming benefits for a dependent she had no legal right to claim. Philip, once he understood what had been happening in his home, ended the relationship immediately. He cooperated fully with investigators. A woman named Diana, who worked in the county's child welfare office and had been assigned to Samantha's case, later told me privately that Samantha was one of the most resilient children she had ever worked with, and that whoever had loved that little girl through her first 4 years had done something right, even in an impossible situation. I believe that credit belongs to Lauren, who had been quietly trying for over a year to locate her daughter after Raina had gradually, deliberately cut off her access. Lauren and Samantha were reunited on a Tuesday morning in May. I was not there for it. It was not my moment to be there for, but Bradley called me afterward and said she wouldn't let go of her. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store and cried for 20 minutes. Raina was charged, not with a slap on the wrist, charged formally, with counts that Alicia and the prosecuting office took seriously. The fraud investigation alone carried significant weight. The child endangerment charge, leaving a 4-year-old locked in a room alone with no adult supervision while she vacationed, was taken very seriously by the courts. She lost the house in Coral Gables within the year. She called me once, from a number I didn't recognize, about 4 months after everything came out. I let it go to voicemail. She said that I had destroyed the family and that she hoped I was proud of myself. I listened to the message once, then I deleted it. What I felt was not pride. It was not revenge satisfaction. It was something much quieter and much more solid. The feeling of having done the right thing, not because anyone was watching, not because I expected a reward, but because a 4-year-old girl was crying behind a locked door, and I was the one who happened to be standing on the other side of it. My mother Teresa took a long time to come to terms with her own role in what happened. She carried enormous guilt. We have talked about it many times since. Our relationship is not the same as it was. It is more honest, which is both harder and better. She adores Samantha. She calls her my miracle because she says God knew she needed reminding of what really matters. Anthony is in therapy. He is doing the work of forgiving himself for the years he was manipulated into believing that distance from his daughter was somehow for her good. He sees Samantha every week. She calls him daddy now, and it undoes him every single time. Tony, my quiet, patient, wonderful husband, never once said, "Once I told you so." What he said was, "You did a brave thing, Moira." He said it simply, without drama, the way he says everything that matters. And then he made me tea and sat with me while I cried. As for me, I cleaned my sister's house on a Thursday morning and found something nobody expected me to find. I didn't go looking for a fight. I didn't go looking for justice. I went with a mop and a key and a good woman named Paula who noticed what silence sounds like when it isn't right. And sometimes that is all it takes. If you take anything from this story, I hope it is this. Trust what you hear when something doesn't sound right. Do not walk past the locked doors in your life because someone told you it was just storage. The people who have been used, overlooked, and taken for granted are not invisible. They are simply waiting for the moment when what they see finally matters. I am Moira. I am 37 years old. I live in Miami. I am not exceptional. I am not a hero. I am a woman who showed up to clean a house and refused to leave a child crying on the other side of a locked door. And that, it turns out, was enough. If this story moved you, if any part of this resonated with your own family, your own quiet battles, your own moments of doing the right thing when nobody was watching, please subscribe. Your support means everything, and it reminds me I'm not alone in this. Leave me a comment below, tell me your story, or just say hello. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and stay, because I have more stories like this one, and every single one of them ends with the truth finding its way out. Thank you for being here with me until the very end. It means more than you know.